a doctoral student in the Ethnic Studies program at the University of California, Berkeley, where her research interests include stress, resilience, and non-Western coping mechanisms in minority population. Awo Suarez is a master's candidate in Latin American and Caribbean Studies at New York University, researching Ifa Orisha religion as it has evolved in the Yoruba diaspora.
Hello. I want to take a moment to thank everybody who has put this conference together. It's so wonderful to be in a room of peers and teachers and guides that, you know, this experience really doesn't happen that often. It's kind of once in a lifetime. So I hope we make it happen more often. And just while I have the podium, I'm on my soapbox. I do want to serve along with Leo with this project as an example of how fruitful and productive collaboration can be. You know, none of us have gotten to where we are without everything that everyone who has come before us. And when we're doing scholarly work, religious work, personal work, I think collaboration is so important. So I know in some of our academic traditions, maybe it's not so easy to do, but I definitely think it's worth it. So I want to encourage anybody who's here who has had good conversations with each other to start saying, let's really work together, let's really write something down. With that, this is a collaborative project between Leo and I. Our project looks specifically at the Lukumi branch of Ifa Orisha religion to explore the hypothesis that this practice is commonly used as a resource for mental health care. Ifa divination is commonly referred to as a guide for people seeking spiritual development and spiritual practice, but it's also a source for psychosocial support and guidance as well. And we all as practitioners know that. I think maybe the general public might not understand that so clearly. Of particular interest to us is the aspect of Ifa Orisha philosophy that posits that untreated mental health issues can later manifest as somatoform illness, which is what a lot of these presentations have been talking about. And so we find that the practice, because of this, grants considerable attention to helping overcome psychological and interpersonal problems. We've undertaken a qualitative study, and we hope that this work will complement research on topics of religiosity and mental health. While the academic addressing psychological variables of Ifa Orisha practice specifically is relatively scant, there is substantial work investigating psychological outcomes within the general category of religiosity and within the context of other religious belief systems. There is a growing body of international research that finds positive correlations, statistical correlations, between religious practice and psychosocial outcomes. So as the religious practice increases, positive psychosocial outcomes increase also. It's a positive correlation. This international body of research draws from an array of disciplinary traditions, which is what makes this work most exciting to me as an incipient ethnic studies scholar. Some of the work that we find is in medicine, biological anthropology, psychiatry, public health, religion, history, folklore, cultural studies. The list goes on and on. There are people trying to answer these same questions from a whole array of disciplines. Some of this by all of the people in here. So given the aforementioned research, we rest this project on the fundamental premise that religious practice and healthcare systems are fundamentally interconnected, and in fact they are inextricably so. We have undertaken an exploratory study, and we're trying to go beyond trying to provide evidence for this positive correlation. We want to get at the question of how and why the correlation comes to be. So we use a comparative lens to explore Ifa Orisha philosophy and practice, and we place particular attention on the Yoruba concepts of the true defined self, known as Ori, the self-chosen destiny, known as Ipin, and sacrifice, known as Ebo. we conceptualize these topics as mapping onto traditional psychological variables. Some of the ones that we want to make connections with are the variables of self-esteem, self-compassion, self-efficacy, capacity for growth, tolerance for change, resilience, and locus of control. So these are all traditional psychological variables, and we find a lot of the fundamental concepts that underlie these psychological variables in Ifa philosophy. We also look somewhat with this study at the role, purpose, and mechanics of Ifa divination within the Lukumi branch. And lastly, we consider the role of the Babalao as a spiritual and individual counselor. Our question going into this project was broadly, what is the therapeutic impact of Ifa Orisha practice? And we hypothesized A, Ifa Orisha spiritual practice serves as an unconventional form of therapeutic intervention and therapeutic advising, and B, that this particular spiritual practice has positive outcomes on mental health. Pretty straightforward claims. We collected a convenience sample of 10 individuals from the Chicago area, 5 men and 5 women, somehow connected to the Ilaya, a house of Ifa Orisha Lukumi of approximately 80 members. 5 of these individuals were initiated into the religion and 5 were not. And the participants varied greatly in how long they had been practicing, ranging from several months to over 15 years. Our youngest participant was 21 and our oldest participant was 38. We had a relatively young sample. And all were unpaid volunteers in our study. So they granted us interviews for the sake of knowledge production. So we conducted semi-structured interviews. Each one lasted about an hour in length, give or take a few minutes. And some of the questions that we asked them, we asked about level of initiation and their prior experience in this particular spiritual practice and in others. We asked about their history of clinical mental health care, family history and involvement in the religion, and their family's level of approval of the participants' spiritual practice. We asked about their personal practice habits, so how much time are they actually spending in practice a week. We were trying to get some numbers. It's hard for people to come up with numbers. We also asked about their understanding of those basic philosophical concepts that were of interest to us, namely Ayanmo, Ori, Ipin, and Ebo, which we will elaborate on shortly. We also asked participants, and this was hard sometimes to do, but we asked them about their mental health concerns with particular attention to the variables of stress and anxiety, which we just talked about, and we asked them to explicitly draw connections between their mental health care concerns and their spiritual practice. So what few preliminary conclusions that we have not yet subjected this data to like a formal coding rubric to try to get numbers and stats, which we hope to do because it is useful when trying to apply this research. But our main finding supports our initial hypothesis, and all participants described Ifa Orisha practice as having a positive effect on their mental health. So some of the other common themes were that participants stated that this practice has given them a sense of direction or a sense of reassurance in their life and in their decision making. Participants endorsed feeling less alone in life. They also reported being able to make better sense of their lives and of themselves after finding out who their tutelary Orisha was through the process of Ifa divination. The participants in our study regarded their Babalao as someone that they could trust and turn to for guidance in times of need. And participants all endorsed a change in how they dealt with stress and anxiety from before to after they began practicing the religion. So of particular interest to us, and this has so connected to our panel today, was finding that participants expressed either superficial or otherwise very basic understanding of the philosophical principles of Ori, Ipin, and Ebo. And they were able to communicate to us the positive change and the benefits that they were receiving from these from this aspect of their practice nonetheless. So we'd like to speak a little bit more about these schools.
Hello, everybody. Hello. As we mentioned, one of our more surprising conclusions was the fact that we found that practitioners it was not necessary for them to have a profound understanding of the mechanics and philosophy behind divination in order to positively benefit from it. Right. However, deconstructing the divination process and the theology behind it, we can see exactly how it works and what types of potential benefits we have available here, with the eventual goal that hopefully this may lead to some sort of exchange between therapists and Ifa diviners, where diviners can learn techniques to enhance their counseling skills, and where therapists can attain deeper insight into treating patients who come from diverse philosophical and spiritual backgrounds. Our time today is short, so we cannot fully deconstruct any Ifa reading, but we can give an overview and give a quick mention of a few key concepts, which are Ori, Impin, Ebo, and the Orisha Lagbatori. Ifa divination is basically all about connecting to your own Ori, more specifically your Ori Inu. Ori Inu is the true divine inner self. This is a part of oneself that is closest to God, the enlightened ancestral soul that chooses one's destiny in life. Ori is an Orisha that speaks exclusively through Ifa, and the argument can be made that the entire purpose of Ifa Orisha religion is to fully connect and align yourself with your Ori. When someone is formally initiated into this religion, they are given a series of divination sessions during which they are given all the information necessary to aspire to fulfill their highest possible destiny in life, thereby achieving oneness with their Ori Inu, in order to then be able to achieve complete oneness with God, or Olodumare. This concept of Ori is known in Hinduism and Buddhism as the Atman. Impin is the individual's destiny. It is made up of three basic components called Akun Lenyan, Akun Legba, and Ayan Mo. Akun Lenyan is the aspect of one's destiny that is chosen, or some could say negotiated, by one's Ori Inu within the context and parameters set within Ayan Mo and Akun Legba, which are things that we really don't have time to get into in depth today, although we can say that Ori Inu exercises free will in the selection of the individual's highest attainable destiny, i.e. you chose your own destiny. Okay. Based on this destiny, the Ori Inu then chooses the Orisha Alagbatori, or the tutelary Orisha. This is the Orisha whose job and duty it is to guide their devotees Ori to their highest possible destiny. It's a common misconception that the person's head Orisha is the person that they're most like. I disagree with this. I think this to be overly simplistic. It's not who you're most like, it's who you most need to be like. If anybody in here knows who their head Orisha is and still has not performed Dosu Kariocha, I suggest you meditate on Odu Ifa Obedi says, Akunle Ayameda Adaye Tano Juni Gani, which roughly means we chose our destiny in heaven, but when we arrive to the world, we become impatient. Thus we are born, and the information from this encounter is veiled from us, and the basic purpose of life then becomes essentially, one, to find your true destiny, and two, to live and fulfill that destiny. Little side note on Odu Ifa as it pertains to Ori. Odu Ifa that are directly related to Ori include Baba Yogbe. This is where the concept of Ori is born, Obeyonu, which contains the famous patagin of the three friends of Oriseku, Ori Lembere, and Afuwape, of when they went to go select their Oris at the house of Orisha Jamoping. Okbeti, which is where the Ori kneels in fetal position before Olodumare to select/receive its destiny, and also in Ogunda Meyi, where Orumila not only declares but demonstrates to the rest of the Orishas that even they cannot take the primary place of Orisha Ori in the lives of their devotees. Okay? Also in connection to the quote in Ogedi that talks about the importance of patience in finding and attaining one's full destiny, Ogunda Meyi as Suruni Babai Wa. This means patience is the father of character. And when I say character, I mean all character. Iwarere, Iwapere, which means good, gentle, and cool character and ideals, which are the eternal pursuits of any Ifa Orisha practitioner. Reconnecting with Iping is where Ifa divination and priests come into play. The basic purpose of normal Ifa reading is to assess where the subject finds themselves in relation to their true destiny at any particular junction. And it is the job of the priest to help people align themselves with their inner being, thereby aligning themselves with their Orinu. In an ordinary Ifa consultation, the Babalawo will find out which Odu the subject is most manifesting at that moment, along with the orientation of that sign, that is to say, if it comes in Ire or Nosorbo or Ibi, as it is known in traditional Yoruba practice. And Osorbo or Ibi signifies some kind of negativity or imbalance in the person's life. And there are several types of Osorbos that we use in Lukumi Ifa that relate directly to issues of general and mental health. For example, and by the way, these are Lukumi terms, so I apologize to all the proper Yoruba speakers in here. Osorbo Aisifiafum is misery, and Osorbo of deep misery and discontent. Osorbo Aiya is Osorbo of fear, panic, anxiety. Osorbo Arumbibun is a loss of health caused by addiction. Okay, and Osorbo Arumbibinuye, this is a loss of health caused by melancholy and severe depression. This starts to get into the subject of somatoform, known as, what do the people used to call somatoform? Psychosomatic disorders, which can include afflictions such as chronic pains of all sorts, epilepsy, irritable bowel syndrome, psoriasis, etc., etc. And that leads us to related topics which are beyond our current scope, but hopefully where we would like to take this research in the future would be in documenting cases where initiation into Ifa religion has cured people of very serious and in many cases terminal diseases. And I know every single initiated priest in here knows of, or at least knows of, somebody who's been saved from cancer by Ifa. Depending on the type and severity of this Osorbo, the diviner will then prescribe an ebo to be made and to correct the present imbalance. Ebo is commonly translated as sacrifice, however, it has many different connotations and meanings, all having to do with actions taken in order to foster forward progress and evolution in both spiritual and physical planes of existence. Ebo can consist of anything from the exhibition of a virtuous action or thought to performing a purifying act, the offering of cooked food or blood sacrifice, undergoing initiation, and virtually countless other situations in which adherents can actively take their destiny into their own lives, into their own hands. It should be noted that apart from the orientation of the Osorbo, we receive just as much, if not more, information from the Udus themselves. For example, if somebody comes and gets a reading and they come out in some kind of Osorbo, we figure out that this Osorbo was self-inflicted, what we call an Osorbo cafetileri, which means a loss. For example, something called Osorbo Arum cafetileri is a loss of health caused by some of our own actions or something that we did to ourselves. To answer a question that I think we had in your presentation, Ugan, you asked if there's other spiritual traditions that have considered illness as coming from God. We personally do, and that would be classified as Osorbo Arum Otonowa. Okay. For example, the Odi Osa states, this person is suffering from mental instability. However, the root cause of this is because this person avoids facing their problems and responsibilities. Okay. The majority of Odu speak to health issues in some fashion or another, and Ifa teaches that untreated mental imbalances can bring about negative entities and unproductive emotions known as Elenini, which can later manifest into physical health ailments in the form of somatoform afflictions such as the ones we already mentioned. For example, Odu Ifa Yeteansa blatantly states, if the person is not careful with their nerves, they will end up with psoriasis. Okay. Odu Ifa Bebara says, if the person is not careful with their nerves and their stress, they will develop severe migraines. Okay. In personal experience, I can tell you that it's not the same to tell somebody, Ifa says you should be careful with your stress, as opposed to Ifa says if you're not careful with your stress, you're going to develop psoriasis and then your skin is going to flake off in a very painful way. The second message tends to say. Of the 10 participants in the first phase of the study, 5 had prior experience with formal counseling. 2 of those 5 are still currently in therapy, and coincidentally, they both started to go see a therapist at around the same time as they started undergoing Ifa Divination. Both these participants stated that the combination of these treatments worked very well for them, that they both plan to continue using these 2 methods in conjunction with each other as a mutual complement to each other. In addition, both have told their respective therapists about their involvement in this, and both of their therapists have responded very positively and encouraged them to continue. Okay, of the 3 people who are no longer in therapy, of those original 5, I'll say they would definitely prefer to exclusively use Ifa as a total replacement to traditional counseling, and all 3 expressed some sort of uneasiness towards the idea of prescribed medications. 2 expressed concerns against the evaluative methods used by psychiatrists in prescribing medicine in the first place, and the other recounted a very, very negative experience, side effect caused by her medication, which was prescribed by a psychiatrist, the negative effects of which could only be dissipated after making a boye or blood sacrifice to Orisha Shango. Okay, after this happened, she recounted the story of that her entire body filled with hives, including her eyeballs, after the abo was made, and then which cleared up in the course of like 3-4 hours. But after that, she has never been back to a therapist and claims that she never wants to. We should also briefly mention that we're not proposing that Ifa replace traditional clinical psychology or Western healthcare systems. In fact, there are numerous Ifa signs that deliberately tell the person to go seek Western healthcare. However, in cases where Ifa says that the person really does need therapy, we can still help the person get the most out of their therapeutic experience by asking pertinent questions such as, is so-and-so the therapist that's going to help me the most? Is how often should I schedule clinical therapy? What type of clinical therapy? And most importantly, in my opinion, the question of, do I really need medication in order to overcome my current mental and emotional problems? Just to give a couple examples. Okay, so if we can just take 30 seconds to talk about future implications of our interests and where we would like to go.
Sorry. One second. Okay. This study was very useful. We got a lot of data. We haven't even been able to use the data as much as we know we will be able to, because it's so much. But what we really hope to do is to start a collection of data and a body of work that helps to situate Ifa Orisha traditions within the spectrum of alternative healing traditions and systems, and lay a scholarly groundwork that may help in legitimizing spiritual healing practices as viable complements to Western healthcare. That's the ultimate goal of this work. Directions for future research. We hope to administer more quantitative questionnaires to ask people about their satisfaction with life and how much depression and anxiety they're experiencing, and see if we can get some numbers to complement the qualitative data. We also hope that this type of research will advocate for the need within the religion to educate practitioners on some of these fundamental principles that we feel are really important in serving as this mental health care function, right? So we've talked about these 3, and there are more, you know. So the need to advocate within the religion for deeper understanding of some of these things and how we can use that mean or not be secretive about it, just because it's, you know, how it. We also want to look closely at physical illness, which is what we talked about. And we didn't have space to talk about this, but just other barriers to using this as a viable system for healing and healthcare, public stigma, and also the widespread occurrence of charlatanism within the religion. These are topics that really need to be addressed within the religion and in circles like this. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for your informative presentation. Very, very nice. Our next presenters, we will have Najee Woodbine, who is a PhD candidate in psychology of religion at Boston University.